Hello, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon. Happy Sunday. I hope you guys are enjoying this Sunday so far. I'm sorry to be a few minutes late. I'm still having some challenges on my PC, so I thought I would come to you live from my phone today. I hope you all are doing well. Hey, let me see. It looks like we have, hey, Esther, thank you for being here. As you come on, please type your name. Hey, Esther, thank you for being here. Good to see you this Sunday. As you come on, please type your name or just wave to me in the chat. That way I know you're here and I can welcome you personally. Again, thank you so much for being here. Hey, Day One, thank you so much. You're looking fabulous too. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. Okay, awesome. I'm sorry to be joining you ladies a little late today. I have been trying to get my PC camera to work, so I just got to work a little bit more on getting that up and running. So again, thank you all for being here. It is so good to see you. Thank you, Esther girl. Thank you. You know I love a good hat, especially on a bad hair day. Thank you so much. So today is really special. You guys know it's March 7th. And so we just finished Black History Month, and now we're into Women's History Month. And so today I want to talk with you about some important women in the history of OBGYN. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about. Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha. Who are they, and why are they so important in the world of OBGYN? So let me give you guys my official introduction. So I am Dr. Madeline, your board-certified OBGYN, international speaker, published author. I work with busy women, whether they're busy inside of the home or outside of the home, to make sure they have the accurate GYN information and birth control access that they need so that they can have the most freedom and control over their lives as possible. Okay? Please feel free to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Dr. Madeline MD. Oh, and while you guys are here, if you could also please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Dr. Madeline MD. What I'm going to be doing on that channel is posting all the previous Facebook Live videos, but I'm also going to be interviewing a few folks that I think you might enjoy hearing from, including a urologist who I think is doing some fabulous work. I've had some people, persons log in and have questions about bladder stuff as they affect women, and so I'm looking forward to scheduling a talk with a wonderful Black female urologist who can answer a bunch of those questions, and so that'll be exciting. So please go and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's also under the same tag, Dr. Madeline MD. Okay, so the three names that I want to talk about today: Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha. I don't know if any of you have heard those names before. If you have, just kind of wave or type, yes, I've heard those names in the chat, so I know that maybe some of you are familiar with them. But the reason we're going to be talking about them today is because they are very important women in the history of this country. And with Black History Month just ending, and with us now being in Women's History Month, I really thought it was important to make sure that as many people as possible know as much as possible about these women, because they really made a difference. And I think they also have an important story to share, because, you know, these days when we talk about the COVID-19 vaccine and we talk about people being hesitant, I also thought it was important that you guys know about these women, because being hesitant about the vaccine or asking more questions about the vaccine is about way more than Tuskegee. Hey, Will, thanks for being here. I appreciate you being here, bro. So it's about way more than Tuskegee. So let's talk about them. So Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha. They are three Black women. Oh, good. So, Will, you've heard of Lucy. Okay, good. I'm glad you're familiar with her name. So these are three Black women. They were enslaved in the 1800s. And one of the reasons I wanted to make sure that we talked about them is because only now are people beginning to talk more about their history. And again, I'm talking about them in honor of Black History Month and Women's History Month. And so Lucy, Anarcha, and Betsy Hey, Ma, how are you? Thanks for joining today. So Lucy, Annika, and Betsy were three enslaved women, again in the 1800s, and they were probably between the ages of 14 and 17 when they were forced to bear children. And sometimes those deliveries, if they did not go smoothly, they were their vaginal area and rectal areas may have been damaged in a way that things were not normal after they gave birth. And so they are important in history because what happened after they gave birth, as you guys know the history of this country, especially for enslaved Black women, is that they were forced to have sex with men when they didn't want to. They were forced to reproduce with men when they didn't want to. And again, there were some situations in which they had damage from the birthing process. So at the time in the 1800s, Dr. J. Marion Sims is a white male surgeon and gynecologist who at the time decided that he would do experiments, surgical experiments on these three women, Lucy, Annika, and Betsy. He did surgeries on them to try to repair the damage that were done at the time they gave birth. Okay? The reason why this is important is because at that time in this country's history, enslaved women, enslaved people were not given appropriate rights. And so he did these surgical experiments on them without their consent. He did them without anesthesia. You know, one of the things that that is still present today. In fact, you know, they do surveys with med students today, including white males med students, and they will ask them a very simple question. They will say, do you think that your white and Black patients feel pain the same? Alarmingly and surprisingly, a lot of those white male students will say no. They don't think white and Black patients feel the same. They think Black patients have a higher tolerance for pain, or again, that's rooted in some of the history that we're talking about today in terms of Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha. And so Dr. J. Marion Sims did the surgeries on these three Black women without anesthesia. And just to paint a picture for you, if you can imagine giving birth, vaginal birth, and having it damage your vagina and rectum in a way that the tissues were torn and they weren't necessarily stitched back together the right way. Sometimes there would be a hole that would form between the vagina and the rectum such that urine was coming out through the rectum and such that stool was coming out through the vagina. They were basically just one big cavity. So you can imagine that's a pretty painful thing just on its own. And so you imagine then you introduce the fact that someone was doing surgery in that area without anesthesia. And you can just imagine. So Lucy, Anarcha, and Betsy, each one of them, it's documented, went through between 20 and 30 surgeries apiece. In doing those surgeries, J. Marion Sims gained recognition as, quote unquote, one of the top gynecologists in the country. He developed instruments that are still used today. And he has statues in his honor that are, oh, hey, hey, cuz Michelle, thank you for joining today. Hey, Jonathan, thank you for joining. Yes, it is disgusting. Hey, Dr. Cecilia AP, thank you for joining today. Thank you. And so yes, Dr. J. Marion Sims has been honored since this time in different ways because he is credited with having done some of these quote unquote life-saving surgeries, even though they were done without anesthesia, even though they were done without the women's consent. So you can see clearly that this was certainly problematic, certainly unethical, and really just inhumane. One of the things that's been happening over the last couple of years is that more and more people have been talking more about Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha, and less about Dr. J. Marion Sims. When, as more of the conversation started, more and more people started demanding things such as, for example, the statues that are up around the country that are in honor of Dr. J. Marion Sims, that those be removed and that they be replaced with things that honor the three Black women who were subject to the harsh multiple surgeries that he did on them back in the 1800s. The repeated surgeries, again, without anesthesia, without their consent. And so that's part of the context in which I wanted to talk about this today, again, because it's Women's History Month, and it's important that we remember these women like Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha. And, you know, you guys know that those are the ones that we know by name. That means there were probably tens or hundreds of others in terms of enslaved Black women. And so there's movement in the right direction in the sense that there was a statue of J. Marion Sims, Dr. J. Marion Sims, in Central Park in New York City that I think it was about 2018, that statue was finally taken down. People started really being vocal about the fact that this person was definitely inhumane with the way that he treated women. And, you know, yes, we know that that's what was going on historically at the time. It doesn't change the fact that these women were treated awfully. It doesn't change the fact that any enslaved persons were treated in an inhumane way. And so the statue was taken down in New York City from Central Park. I understand that it was moved to Brooklyn. Apparently he's buried in Brooklyn. After he did most of these surgeries on women in Alabama and in some of the other southern states, he went up to New York where he did the rest of his career as a surgeon and a gynecologist, and that's also where he died. So I understand that his statue was moved from Central Park over to Brooklyn. He does have statues that remain in Alabama and also South Carolina, from what I understand. There may be others, but again, I think it was, that's why I wanted to talk with you about these ladies who are so important as part of our history, so that you could, so that we can understand and have more of a conversation. Because again, some of the questions that people are asking as it relates to the COVID-19 vaccine, they go way deeper than the Tuskegee syphilis study, and we can talk about that as well. Yes, Michelle, our women did have to endure so much. It's really awful. Hey, Monique, thank you for being here today. So again, just to touch base again, Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha, 3 enslaved Black women in the 1800s who had multiple births, births that were usually the result of non-consensual sex, of forced rape, and they had some damage to their pelvic organs after they gave birth to those babies. The damage to those pelvic organs were surgically repaired by a doctor named J. Marion Sims, who did multiple surgeries on these women over and over again without any anesthesia and without their consent. Again, just for context, these ladies are our sisters, our ancestors were between the ages of 14 and 17 when these things happened, okay? Again, a really important part of our history. These days, as more and more conversations are happening about Lucy and Betsy and Anarcha, people are sometimes calling them the mothers of gynecology. So be familiar with that phrase as well. If you hear it, that's part of the movement that's going on, that people are really trying to appropriately honor these women, young women who went through so much back in the 1800s. And also at the same time, trying to make sure that the names of people like J. Marion Sims and the statues that honor people like J. Marion Sims are taken down, or at least the people know the truth about this person who was called the father of modern gynecology. Is that really the name for someone who did what he did to women, to our ancestors? Even if it was the 1800s, there's no excuse for that. So let's fast forward now to the COVID-19 vaccine. You know, there are a lot of news reports going on about Black and brown people being hesitant and resistant to receive the vaccine. I don't really see that as much as I see people asking appropriate questions based on the history that has happened in this country as it relates to certainly racism, as it relates to medical studies that have been done without our permission and disproportionately on us as Black and brown people. Yes, there was a Tuskegee syphilis study that ended in 1972, I believe. And, you know, that was done by the U.S. Public Health Service. So that was actually a government-run and funded study whereby men in the Tuskegee area of Alabama who had been diagnosed with syphilis, they were withheld once it was learned that penicillin was an appropriate treatment. appropriate treatment was withheld from them because the scientists wanted to watch the natural course of syphilis. Syphilis, when it's not treated, it leads to many bad outcomes. So if a man has syphilis and he passes it on to a female sex partner, when that female sex partner gives birth, she can actually pass syphilis on to the child. Persons with syphilis can develop neurological symptoms. They can have difficulty walking. It can lead to a lot of things, blindness, meningitis. And so that's the syphilis study. But again, there are other reasons why people are asking questions when it comes to a vaccine that was developed quickly, that was developed with government funding support. Again, it's understandable why people would ask questions. Jonathan says, great job in keeping Black History Month. There's enough history that we need to talk about every month. Absolutely. And Jonathan, this is Women's History Month. And so I wanted to speak about these women, not only because we just finished Black History Month, but because we're now in Women's History Month. And they certainly made, even though they didn't realize it, important and huge contributions to what we know about women's health, the field of gynecology, and certainly what we know about surgeries and different things as they relate to the way we practice medicine today. So I wanted to take this time to honor Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha. And they were 3 enslaved Black women who bore children as teenagers and who went through, I can't even imagine, imaginable pain, not only with giving birth as early as they gave birth and damaging their pelvic organs, but also in the surgeries that were done, the multiple surgeries that were done without anesthesia after giving birth. And so I wanted to talk about them today because as we celebrate and honor Women's History Month, I think it's so important that we honor not only the women that are well known and talked about and who have written books and those you might be aware of, but also women who are not as well known, women who are not talked about in the same way. And, we have to celebrate and honor them as well, because certainly they have made huge sacrifices, and their sacrifices are not really talked about enough and not really understood enough as we walk around today and know some of the things we know about gynecology and different instruments that we use and different surgical techniques that we do. They are certainly on the backs of these sisters, our ancestors, Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha. So that's what I wanted to share today. Thank you, Dr. Brooke. Hi, thank you so much for joining today. So that's what I wanted to share today. Does anyone have any questions or concerns, any clarification or anything at all as we have this talk today to honor and celebrate Black women in our history who made contributions to OBGYN and didn't even realize it, but certainly lived through just really just atrocities that we have no idea all that they went through, but we can imagine that it was brutal. Michelle said, "Thank you for talking about it." Of course, because it's important that we know about this, that we understand it, and that we just be mindful of it, so that we don't take anything that's going on today for granted, and that also for those who are listening or those we encounter and their providers, it's also important for providers to understand that what they're seeing in terms of COVID-19, some people are not even calling it hesitancy. Some people are calling it deliberation, which I think is a better word, because it's appropriate to be deliberate in thinking about the reasons why you might be interested or not interested in taking the vaccine. Oh, and that's one thing I want to end on as well, because, the news has been doing a lot of coverage about some of us who are hesitant or not interested in getting the vaccine. But I want to flip the story a little bit, because, you know, I'm seeing the opposite. I'm seeing lots of Black and brown folks going to get the vaccine. Here in Atlanta, there are new efforts happening. Yes, there have been challenges in getting them because it's been hard for some people to get appointments and all of that. But as access is removed as an issue, I see more and more Black and brown people engaging and wanting to get the vaccine. In Atlanta here, the Mercedes-Benz Stadium is about to be opened as around-the-clock resource for people who are interested in getting the vaccine. Again, because it's been so hard to get through when you're trying to make an appointment. So that's going to be an option for people. In my home neighborhood, Harlem in New York City, the Bronx has opened up Yankee Stadium as a 24-hour site to get the COVID-19 vaccine. And, you know, I was looking at the Bronx News the other day, and that line is there day and night. People really, a lot of people really want to get the vaccine. So as we think about the COVID-19 vaccine, definitely let's try to tell that part of the story. Let's tell the story about the people who are interested in trying to get the vaccine, but having challenges because of access. And so let's make the story be about trying to expand access for those who are interested in it. Yes, of course, there are going to be some people who are still deliberating, again, for many of the reasons that I talked about earlier, including some of the inappropriate ways that Black and brown people have been treated in this country when it comes to medicine and research and science. But I think when we look at 2021, it's important to, when it comes to the COVID-19 vaccine, tell the full story. So I don't want us to like blame or shame those who are still deliberating about the vaccine. But I also want to celebrate and honor those who have deliberated and thought about it and still decided to get the vaccine. Okay. So, oh, Michelle has a question. What are the things that Dr. Sims found that I may have met? Oh, so great question. Cause so, you know, the speculum, okay, so speculums, they have the metal ones and they have the plastic ones. A lot of people these days are using more of the plastic ones because you can just dispose of them. But every time whenever a woman has a pelvic exam, a speculum isn't always used, but we always use a speculum for things like a pap test because we need the speculum to hold the vaginal walls back so that we can see the mouth of the womb or the cervix. And that speculum is what helps us to do that. Dr. J. Marion Sims is credited with being the one to discover the speculum that we use in gynecology pretty much all the time. The actual surgical technique, he is also credited with discovering. The surgical technique that repairs what we call a vaginal fistula. It can be a vaginal rectal fistula. The technique of basically repairing those layers of tissue so that the vagina and the rectum are separate again and everything goes through to the right place. That surgical technique, he's credited with founding that. Again, you know, he was able to do unlimited surgeries on women without anesthesia and without their consent. And so he basically just kept trying on many women, 3 of whom we know the names of, Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha, until he got it right, until he got the surgery right. So those are 2 of the main things he's credited with, Michelle. Thank you for the question. Jonathan says, very informative, and those on, please share this on your social media. Thanks. Absolutely, will do, Jonathan. Thank you so much for that comment. Will, you said that's me? Oh, I know, Michelle. It is a sad history, but you know, absolutely important. I'm glad that you all are engaged and that we're here and that we're able to talk about it in a way that honors and respects them, Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha, because they certainly deserve to be honored for all that they went through. And certainly they went through a lot, unimaginable, I'm sure. So, so again, I want to thank you all for joining me today. Please, when we're done today, so my YouTube channel is up now, Dr. Madeline, MD. Again, later in the month, I'm going to have some special guests join us on Dr. Madeline, MD. And I'm going to try to get some more insight about some of those topics that we've touched on that you guys have asked for more detail about I'm going to bring on a Black female urologist and talk some about the questions that you guys have asked about bladder anatomy and control and all of that. And if you guys have other requests, just let me know. But I'm looking forward to it being a fun month where we get to celebrate and honor many, many women who do a range of things. And let's make it. Oh, Will, yes, you deliberated and you got the vaccine. Absolutely. Strong work, Will. I'm proud of you. I guess I was like you in the beginning. I deliberated. I wasn't quite sure. It kind of went fast. And, you know, I just read more and I studied more and then I felt comfortable. So kudos to you, Will, for getting the vaccine. I hope your doses have gone well so far. And then Lee says, hey, Number, I share your lives with my staff, mostly 20, 30-year-olds, to change their minds about getting vaccines. Please don't stop. Oh, thank you so much for saying that, Number. Absolutely. We got to keep on getting the word out there. Keep on sharing as much information as possible. Now, I'm not going to have Dr. Kizzy on personally, but I know several other entities are going to be hosting Dr. Kizzy. Just for another shout out for Women's History Month, Dr. Kizzy Corbett is the NIH scientist who led the team that has been working on mRNA vaccine technology for almost a decade. And so that young sister deserves all the kudos. And the thought is that if more people can hear from her as a leading scientist who may be at most like 34, 35, she's young and she's bright, she's on it, she's doing an excellent job. And so, so thank you for saying that, Number. I hope to continue to share as much information as possible to get the word out. And Jonathan says, keep doing your thing. Thank you so much, Jonathan. Dr. Cecilia says she is awesome. Yes, isn't she, Dr. Banga? She really is outstanding. Dr. Kizzy is outstanding. Oh, you know what? And before I sign off, I want to close with something because I think I was talking with my sons and I realized that not everyone has grown up watching Roots. And so I want to leave you guys with something that you can tell me about next week. So and if you know the answer, please put it in the chat. If not, then we'll follow up with it next week. There was a famous series that was on back in the, I guess it was the 70s or 80s, called Roots. And hi, Connie, thank you so much for joining. Oh, you're very sweet. Thank you. And in that series, the name Kizzy was given to one of the characters. Does anyone remember what Kizzy means? If you do, type it in the chat. If not, we'll talk about it next week. But if you remember watching Roots and if you know that Kizzy was someone who was in the family tree of Alex Haley, if you remember what Kizzy means, then type it in the chat. If not, we will talk about it next week, okay? It'll be fun. Anyone remember? Yes, Connie, Roots was a game changer. I don't know that we had seen something as intense as Roots when we were in elementary school. Connie and I went to high school together, y'all. And so if you were in the 5th grade, Connie, I must have been in the 5th grade as well. And yes, I cried throughout the whole thing. No, Kizzy does not mean cousin. And Michelle said, no, I don't remember. Okay, I'm not going to keep y'all waiting. So in the story of Roots, which you guys know took place during the time of enslavement in this country, Kunta Kinte's character, who was renamed Toby when they got to America, he and his wife had a little girl, and that little girl was named Kizzy. And when he told his wife that that's what he wanted to name her, the wife said, why? What does it mean? And he said, Kizzy means stay put. And if we name her that, then the white men who run this plantation will not take her away from us because we've given her a name that means stay put. Okay? Yeah, it's a powerful name. It's a strong name. And I won't tell you the rest of the story, but she didn't end up staying. Lee says she just cheated and looked it up, shocked by the answer. Yep, it means stay put. And that was the wish of a mother and father who loved their daughter and wanted to be able to raise her for her whole life. And they gave her that name. And unfortunately, it didn't come to be that way. Michelle says, wow. Carney says, heartbreaking. Absolutely, absolutely heartbreaking. So, I don't want to keep you guys any longer. I really, really appreciate that you guys logged on for today. I'm glad that we were able to talk about Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha. Again, just to summarize, they were 3 enslaved Black women who bore several children when they were between the ages of 14 and 17, had damage to their pelvic area, the vagina and rectal area after giving birth to those children, and that had multiple surgeries performed upon them without anesthesia, without their consent, by a surgeon at the time named Dr. J. Marion Sims. In recent years, his statue was removed from Central Park in New York City, but his statue still remains in at least 2 southern states that I'm aware of, Alabama and South Carolina. So today, please remember Lucy, Betsy, and Anarcha. Remember what they went through. Don't take for granted that when you go see your GYN, that speculum that's being used, they had something to do with that. Some of the surgical techniques that are used, maybe on you or family members, they had something to do with that. And let's honor them this Women's History Month, as well as for Black History Month, which just ended last month. So with that said, I'm going to bid you adieu. I am, and Connie says, I feel like many people are waking up to the fact that children were sold away from their families during slavery. There needs to be a lot more requirements about slavery education. Absolutely, Connie, I agree. Having honest, true, transparent education in this country is so important. And hey, Hope, hi, thank you so much for joining today. Having honest conversations about that in this country is really important. And it's important that the history books get it right and make it accurate and be transparent about it, and not try to revise it in a way like some of the southern states have tried to do, revise it in a way that it looks like people were, you know, being paid for voluntary labor, which was absolutely not the case. So hopefully we'll continue to resist and fight back and push to make sure that the education that our children get is as honest and transparent as it can be as it relates to the things that have happened in this country, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay, so it's important that that's something that we continue to work on. So, without further ado, I want to thank all of you again for joining me today. I am Dr. Madeline, your board-certified OBGYN international speaker and published author. I work with women, whether they are busy inside of the home or outside of the home, to make sure they get accurate GYN information and birth control access so that they can have the most freedom and control over their lives that they desire. Please, please, please follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Dr. Madeline MD. And also now my YouTube channel is up. Please go there and subscribe to my channel, which is Dr. Madeline MD. I'm going to be doing some live interviews with folks as the month goes on, and I look forward to having all of you join and support. Thank you so much. Michelle says exactly, cuz so we will continue the struggle. Yeah, I hope all of y'all have a great rest of your Sunday. Okay, I love y'all very much. Thank you so much. Thank you, cuz. Mwah. Bye-bye.